Good to see her again. She was taking care of me since she was a child. In the early stages of this experience.
It's been a while.
In fact, we missed you at the SAG.
I'm really sorry. My intention is to actually be active in that. I just apologize. I think what he's doing is really important. I try to push a few of the ideas.
And today's speaker is the former Speaker of the House, the Honorable Newt Gingrich.
I want to thank all of you for allowing me to come down here and have a chance to talk with you. I remember in April, looking at the television set on the Today Show on the morning that Jimmy Carter came from behind on rural farm votes to win the Wisconsin primary against Mo Udall, and realizing I'm now going to run on the Republican ticket against a Georgia favorite son. And the best campaign I ever ran was in '76, because I had to do well enough, knowing I was almost certainly going to lose, I had to do well enough to survive so I could come back and run a third time, which is about 20 miles outside of Orléans. And the French had 100% inflation. They still had World War II damage. We would go to high school past, or middle school back then, past, literally bomb damage done by, more done by Patton than done by the Germans, because this part of France had basically surrendered. And while we were there, the French army killed the Fourth Republic and brought de Gaulle back. I mean, so you had this real sense that these things are real, that turmoil happens, that that things can really be extraordinarily dangerous. And in the spring of '58, my father had taken us to the battlefield of Verdun, and I went back and I really thought all summer about what we had experienced. And we were transferred to Stuttgart, which is the 7th Army headquarters at the time, and 28. Give you some idea of scale. But it starts with these guys. Because you have to have a vision of where singular exception of urban insurgency, which we need to invent a doctrine for. With that one exception, we have virtually no military problems today. But we could easily find later. I mean, it was just that kind of, so you had this, I grew up in a world of thinking this stuff's all really absolutely true. And therefore, I had to ask myself, so what's my role? And I decided in the summer of 1958 that societies can die, and that the margin. As part of my background, I was born in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. We moved all around the world, and ended up at Fort Benning, Georgia. And when I was a junior in high school, I became a Georgia. Lost both of those. People said to me, "You can't win." It turned out they were right. I got 48 Maxwell and said, "We're putting together the Joint Warfighting Course, and we need somebody who's in politics to talk to the course." And Richard Nixon turned us down. "You're our second choice." She said, "We are voting for Georgia's favorite son to get revenge for Sherman's march through Georgia." And I thought to myself, this was about 10 o'clock in the morning, I thought to myself, what are the odds they're going to split their ticket for a Yankee-born Army brat with a weird accent, a strange name, who teaches at a college and is a Republican? And I concluded not very good, and I was right. I got 52% in Carroll County. Gerald Ford got 26%. I went from 48.5 to 48.3. I came back a third time. My opponent, the incumbent, quit. And to give you an example of strategy in politics, I was behind by 51-37 in mid-September. But they're not military in the sense, we tend to define military as the application of combat power, which I think is a profound mistake. War is inherently knocked out with limited resources in a 6-week period. We beat her all the way 54-46. But I give you that as background because politics as applies to the art of war. Deep, mid, and near applies fully as much to art politics as does the art of war. Something was coming on being. I always argue in this course, the hardest job senior officers have is to so thoroughly understand the art of war that you can educate the prince so that the prince can be in the room. Because if the prince doesn't know enough to ask about the next step, the prince is going to end up making big mistakes and with great security until it all falls apart. And it can't just be lecturing. You have to actually teach them enough that they decide that they are able to ask the questions that need to be asked before a decision. And that requires a very sophisticated understanding of the art of war. Because Roosevelt, in fact, was a very, very smart man. Marshall, I think, is the greatest administrator of the 20th century, but it's worth looking at. The people who do this right, Lincoln by 1865, or late 1864, knows, as it turns out, is chimpanzees actually spend more time stroking each other when they're fighting. It's very useful to study. If you read chimpanzee politics, you'll never see either the White House or the Pentagon or the Congress the same. And you'll be able to watch Bush and Chirac interact, and you'll understand exactly what's going on biologically. How does a bureaucracy talk to itself, and how does it interact with what it thinks is reality? So I was living in Brussels. One of our advantages over there. So I'm going to talk to you about that, and I want to give you a framework for that first. So let me